Hello there, good people, and welcome to It's a Shaw Thing. I'm your host, Rob Shaw. Well, the results are in, the polls are ready. We're talking college football, of course. What else is there these days? All right, well, a lot of excitement this weekend. We got a fresh number one team at the top. In fact, a fresh top three. So let's discuss whether or not it is legit. We'll start right off the top with number one. It's the Alabama Tide with a big win, 35-0 over Arkansas State. A win that was expected. Nonetheless, it was important for them because they've struggled to blow out teams so far this year. Non-conference game against Tulane was a bit too close for comfort. They barely got away with a win against Kentucky, winning by just a field goal there, and they also barely won against Mississippi. So finally a chance to blow away a team. They certainly did do that. So what to expect from this team? Well, the schedule remains pretty tough for them. They have 3 games against the SEC. If they win those, of course, they will play another one for the SEC title. But first to get there, they have to play against the defending champion, LSU, at LSU. That's coming up this weekend. Not the same team from last year, but still a pretty impressive top 20 team in the nation. And then after that, they play against Mississippi State, whose defense has been pretty impressive so far. And then after that comes their arch rival, Auburn. Doesn't matter how bad Auburn's playing to that point, when those two teams get on the field, anything could happen. So let's say Alabama somehow does remain undefeated in those 3 games. Then what happens next? How about an SEC title game against who else but the Florida Gators? Who will win that one? I like the chances of the Gators winning that one. So in other words, don't expect Auburn to hang in that number 1 spot much longer. In fact, I don't think they'll finish the season in the top 5. All right, next up, the new number 2 team in the nation after a huge win over number 1 Texas is Texas Tech Red Raiders. Well, they've proven to have the number 1 offense in the nation after that stellar performance, but most importantly, we saw a pretty decent defense at times, and most of all, we saw some clutch performances. That play by Mike Crabtree at the end was huge, securing the win for Texas Tech, but they're just now halfway through the most difficult stretch of the season. 4 straight games against top 20 opponents. Took care of 19 Kansas, took care of number 1 Texas, but they still have top 10 Oklahoma State, and then they have to visit the Sooners in Sooner Nation. They'll be in a BCS Bowl, but I don't think they'll be in the championship game. And finally, the number 3 team in the nation, Penn State. Joe Pa had a chance to relax this weekend on a bye, but they'll be right back in action soon. The good news for them, well, so far their hardest work is already in the rear view. They took care of Ohio State at Ohio State. That, in my mind, was the biggest game they had to play. Now, of course, they do finish the season against a top 20 team in Michigan State, but aside from that, Indiana, and Iowa aren't the most difficult of foes. They have to be very impressed with what they've done so far. Evan Royster is very good on the offensive side. The defense really is one of the most complete packages so far in college football this season. I think it will stay that way. I do suspect that Penn State will remain undefeated for the remainder of the season. This is a team you could expect to see in the BCS championship game. So who are the other teams so far who have a shot? Well, there are several undefeated teams, including Utah, Boise State, Ball State. Of course, we saw what happened to Tulsa this past weekend. Apparently, the SEC a little more difficult than Conference USA. But don't worry about any of those teams. They won't be in the national championship game. We learned that lesson last year when Hawaii came close and then got clobbered against a team with a couple of losses. So what exactly will happen? I expect the Florida Gators to be in that game. That was a huge win for them this past weekend over the Georgia Bulldogs. We knew about their offense. We knew how good Tim Tebow and Percy Harvin can be. What we didn't realize was how well and how mature this defense has come along so far. So this is a team, in my mind, that could end up being the national champion for the 2nd year out of the past 3 years. So watch out for them. I'm expecting Penn State against Florida, but of course there are several games that still have to be played. And do visit us right back here at opensports.com on Thursday for your preview of the big games coming up this week. And I do expect quite a performance coming up for Texas Tech against Oklahoma State, one of the many games I'll discuss. Until then, have a great day.
So you think you can tackle a pro? There's only one way to find out. Click on fantasy at opensports.com.